Airstrikes, arrests, and a declaration of war as the French president vows to eradicate terrorism. Meanwhile, President Obama defends his restrained strategy against ISIS. Wyatt Goolsby is at the White House with more tonight. Wyatt?
Brian, the president is calling the Paris attacks a terrible and sickening setback in the fight against ISIS, but he says it would be a mistake to send U.S. troops into a ground war. France, however, says it's time to hit back.
France is at war.
Passionate and precise, French President François Hollande promises to extinguish terrorism in France and abroad. He proposes extending France's state of emergency for 3 months and to make it easier to detain and deport suspected terrorists. He vows the soul of his nation will survive this bloodshed.
I want France to remain itself. Barbarians attacking it want to disfigure it. They will not succeed.
The Friday attacks that killed 129 people in Paris have sparked a series of raids, arrests, and detentions in France and Belgium. In the U.S., the CIA and FBI are on heightened alert as ISIS has released a video threatening more attacks. In Raqqa, Syria, the French continue a bombing campaign against ISIS. In Turkey for the G20 summit, President Obama defends his actions in response to bruising questions, accusing the U.S. of failing to act aggressively against the terror organization.
So when I said that we are containing their spread in Iraq and Syria, in fact, they control less territory than they did last year. And the more we shrink that territory, the less they can pretend that they are somehow a functioning state, and the more it becomes apparent that they are simply a network of killers who are brutalizing local populations.
One of those brutal killers is now the subject of an intense international manhunt. 26-year-old Salah Abdeslam is believed to be connected to the Paris attacks, a reminder that danger persists even in the midst of mourning. Republican lawmakers say they will try to block President Obama's plans to increase the flow of Syrian refugees into the U.S. Some say that the nation's refugee program should be suspended entirely following the deadly terror attacks. Some are worried that terrorists may be disguising themselves as refugees. Brian?
Wyatt Goolsby at the White House, thank you. Fred Fleitz is with the Center for Security Policy, previously served 25 years in the U.S. national security positions. And Herbert Tinsley is with the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Responses to Terrorism from the University of Maryland. Fred, sadly, this is just the latest in a string of terror attacks, yet you see this as a game changer. Why?
Well, I think French President Hollande described this well when he said this was an act of war by a terrorist army. And when he said that, he basically was defining what ISIS did as a threat to the security of the French state. He has to act decisively, and his political enemies are already after him for not defending France.
And Herbert, you've been studying this for some time, and you see this as a cycle that really began more than a dozen years ago.
Absolutely. These kinetic small cadre attacks in urban areas against soft targets in traditionally military-controlled environments goes all the way back to the aftermath of the Kargil War in Pakistan. At that point, this particular tactical package became something of utility for a number of jihadist networks in South Asia, and they have spread, of course, now, as we can see, to France. And there is some reason to suppose that the Oslo attacks, in fact, back in 2011, was something of a dress rehearsal, not by jihadists, but definitely a proof of concept as given by Anders Behring Breivik, an ultra-right conservative extremist. In that point, it shows, no doubt, that this is a tactical package that, of course, terrorists from all walks of life are interested in.
So France, in the President Hollande, is saying, you know, we're serious about this, we're going after these guys. Where does that go from here, and where does the U.S. come into this?
Well, the French are taking decisive actions with airstrikes, with about 160 raids across France. They're thinking of stripping citizenship from dual citizens, throwing terrorists out of the country. Concerning U.S. policy, I'm very worried. It looks like the president is going to continue to try to fight ISIS from the air, and with a diplomatic process that's going nowhere, I'm concerned that we don't have a strategy.
And Herbert, there seems to be really an increased pressure on ISIS, but where does that go from here? Does that just mean more of these deadly attacks, or is there a breaking point where they're going to crumble?
Well, I think there will come a breaking point, no doubt, but that does not necessarily say there will be fewer attacks. Of course, the more pressure you place on an organization like this that has already lost a great deal of momentum, the more desire they may have to regain momentum by shifting their targeting. And targeting the West has, since Al-Qaeda has proven this widely, has always been a way of recharging, if you will, the jihadist campaign.
We're here in Washington, D.C. We just saw that the latest threat is us. Does that bother you guys, or is that just a terror tactic?
It bothers me, and I disagree that ISIS has lost momentum. I think ISIS is still fairly strong. It is a global movement. The president's comment last week that ISIS has been contained is frankly absurd. And I think that we're going to see more attacks like this until we take ISIS out on the ground in Syria and Iraq.
Fred Fleitz and Herbert Tinsley, thank you both for being with us tonight.
Good to be here.